And welcome everyone to co-production in a super diverse city with us here at Birmingham, Age and Better in Birmingham. We're really excited that you've joined today, and so thank you for that, and we hope you will learn something useful from our experiences. So as Vicky said, this webinar is part of the Stronger Together Festival of Co-Production Learning hosted by Age and Better. And my name is Alina, and I work as part of the Age and Better in Birmingham team. And Age and Better in Birmingham is one of 14 areas across the country that aims to develop creative ways for people over 50 to be actively involved in their local communities. So in Birmingham, our programme is delivered by a partnership of voluntary and community sector organisations led by Birmingham Voluntary Service Council. And today we are exploring how Age and Better in Birmingham was co-produced and co-delivered with older people in this super diverse city. We will be sharing our thoughts and experiences on this subject, and it may not be relevant to where you work, as we know that a tailored approach works best to fit your local community, and that's the best way forward. But we do hope that you'll find some parts that are really useful for you today. So just a little bit about the format today. We will start with a presentation about the diversity of the environment in which we're working in Birmingham and the ways in which we sought to create an inclusive environment. And we'll then have a panel discussion talking about what went well and the challenges that we sought and the barriers that we discovered and how we overcame them. We will finish with a Q&A today. So if you have any questions at all, please either hold on to them until the end, or you can post them to our panelists by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you don't know how to do that, you can raise your hand by clicking on reactions and raise the hand. And I will then make sure that I unmute you and you will be able to have a chance to speak when the time comes. So without further ado, let me introduce Dave Coffin, my colleague from Birmingham.
So then, I'm Dave Coffin and I'm a relationship manager at Age and Better in Birmingham. This presentation will just give you a brief overview of the programme in Birmingham and how we approached its design and delivery in this super diverse environment. Okay. So as Alina said, Age and Better is part of the national Age and Better programme, and the approach here in Birmingham, The approach here in Birmingham emphasised mutual aid, community action and preventative interventions, and was delivered in partnership with a range of organisations from the city and led by Birmingham Voluntary Service Council. We used a methodology called Asset-Based Community Development, or ABCD, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, and that focuses on sustainable development of communities based on their strengths and potentials. So what's strong about them rather than what's wrong, rather than focusing on the deficits. So over the 7 years of the programme, or 6 years, we're into our 7th year now, groups have supported over 9,000 citizens of all ages across the city, and activities that those grassroots groups have put on have ranged from bicycle clubs, coffee mornings, ballet and Bhangra dance classes, woodworking, floristry, men's sheds, and also quite a few allotment plots were taken over as well, which is great, so gardening. The programme has supported the creation of over 280 new activities to date. Okay, so a little bit about Birmingham. So Birmingham is a diverse place. Its population is about 1.2 million. And outside of London, it's considered the most diverse city in the UK. Put simply, Birmingham is a city of migrants. And obviously there are recent migrations and also longer established minority populations. And the city is home to people from an estimated 200 countries, and that's the present day. Its communities and neighbourhoods are dynamic, complex and culturally diverse. It's also the youngest major city in Europe, with under 25s accounting for around 40% of the population. So it has more people in the younger age groups than in the older age groups, compared to the England average. Just something about those over 65, 30% of the over 65s live alone, which is an increased risk of social isolation. And one of the most important things about the city is that significant wealth and income disparities. It's in the top 10% of the country when it comes to pension and poverty. An estimated 25,000 people over 60 plus experience income deprivation. So that's kind of the city in a nutshell. It's very diverse, very complex, and obviously a very complex environment to deliver any kind of project in. So we said we'd give you some kind of insights into how we approach. So one of the key things was to understand the environment you're going to be working in. or you're going to deliver a project in. So as we say, it's a complex and diverse environment. So one of the first things we did was commission research by the Aston Research Centre for Healthy Ageing at Aston University. And this was to help us better understand the localised root causes of social isolation, so we could better allocate resources to achieve the most impact. So from that mapping and analysis, which is one of the first things we did, we determined that while the project could and should be delivered across the city, there should also be some targeted interventions as well. So we have worked with communities of interest, communities of identity, and 2 geographic communities. So that would be older carers, the LGBT community. Tyburn would be an outer city area with a high population over 80, and Sparkbrook would be an inner city area which is multi-ethnic, so there are language barriers and cultural differences which increase risk of social isolation. So key takeaway there, understand the environment you're going to work in. Okay. Next thing, partnership. As Alina said and alluded to, this program has been delivered in partnership. And the reason was to ensure that the organisations we worked with were trusted and understood by the communities we were going to work with, ensuring the programme is immediately embedded within those communities. And I think that's really, really important to develop collaborative working. Next slide, what we delivered. So just in a nutshell, there were 7 key strands of activity, and all of it was designed to reduce social isolation for the over 50s. A big emphasis was on that kind of grassroots community-led activity. So that would be the Ageing Better networks. They were supported by network enablers, which were those community organisations that were embedded in communities. A service directory kind of communicated, which is a kind of social prescribing portal, communicated that activity out to the wider community. And the Ageing Better Fund was micro investments into those grassroots activities. So that's kind of the grassroots or community facing activity. We also then had local action plans, which were strategic targeted interventions, which were designed again to look at those root causes of social isolation and tackle those and lead to kind of service change. And empowerment and support was the co-production element, which we'll talk about more broadly in a minute. And then evaluation and learning is where we communicated out again, particularly targeting kind of strategic bodies, public bodies, funders about the learning that we got from the work we were doing. So again, they could look at how they approach delivering services within communities. Okay, so co-production. So where does co-production fit into this? So from its inception, Ageing Better in Birmingham worked with partner organisations whose beneficiaries reflected the city's diversity. We recruited older adults to co-produce the programme through those partners, and that ensured that the programme was very, responded to and understood the needs of the communities it was working in. The group of older people had lived experience of social isolation, and we supported them to engage through a tailored programme empowerment called Every Step of the Way. So just give you a quick overview of how co-produced this program's been. You see that organogram there, which is kind of the program, and older people were involved in every aspect of delivery and governance. So they're on the governance group, the core partnership. They were influential in influencing the learning and sharing and marketing and promotional activity through being sat on subgroups. Obviously, they were involved in delivering activity on the ground and also involved in things like staff recruitment, procurement. So literally, older people were represented at every level of this program, from governance to delivery, which is really, really good. So some of the challenges we faced in ensuring that diverse voices co-produce the programme. So I'll just talk through some of them in a minute. The challenges weren't just confined to enabling access to those who may have characteristics protected under the Equality Act, but also included broader issues such as skills and poverty. So I'll just talk through 4 general things we came across, and then obviously we'll go into our discussion. So just general recruitment. So when the Every Step of the Way group was set up at the start of the programme, so about 3 or 4 years ago now, we struggled to engage with a multi-ethnic group of experts that truly reflected the city we were working in. So while members were often from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, again, it was predominantly white British membership. So what we did straight away is started to work with our partner organisations to understand what the barriers were to people accessing the group or participating in the group, and talk to them about how they approach recruiting members. And as you'll see, the group now broadly reflects the diversity of the city. One of the challenges we came across, one of the areas we work in is Sparkbrook, and it's a inner city suburb with a high proportion of the population would be Pakistani Muslim origin, and we had a lack of people from that hub, from that suburb, joining the Age of Experience group, the co-production group. When we dug into that, we found that people in that community were, particularly older people in that community, were very hesitant about working with organisations from outside of the community, and very, very reluctant to leave the suburb to go and participate in activity. So the way we got around that, we addressed the issue by kind of creating a mini Age of Experience group specific to members of that community that fed into the main group. Now, that isn't always ideal, but it did get those voices into the conversation. Okay, skills, another barrier that we had to address. So, as I said, co-production members were engaged at all levels of activity, including in some quite technical processes. So, recruitment panels, procurement panels, again, very, very technical. So, in the initial cohort, we realised that there were only 1 or 2 people that had those skills already to be able to engage in that process, but that wasn't fair because everybody should be able to engage in those processes. So there was a tailored programme of training and support to ensure everybody that wanted to could participate in those kind of processes, and then ongoing mentoring as well, so people weren't just thrown at the deep end, they were supported every step of the way to engage in the process. And then finally, as I say, Birmingham's got some horrendous pockets of deprivation, including in some of the priority areas we were working in. So every step of the way, and the Age of Experience group are adequately resourced, both through a contract to facilitate the group, but also with funding to ensure the out-of-pocket expenses, so taxi services to meetings are covered, printing ink, those sorts of things. Lunches are put on as well, so nobody should feel they can't participate because they haven't got the money to. And I think that's really, really important. And that isn't done in a stigmatizing way or a kind of, identifying who's in poverty. It's put on for everybody so everyone can participate. Okay, so just the key takeaways really from that presentation in summary. So research and understand the environment you're going to work in is really, really important. Develop community-based partnerships so you can really dig into the communities you're going to work with. Co-produce at all levels and make sure it's resourced so everyone that wants to participate can participate where they want to. And be flexible and adaptive in how you approach the delivery of your projects. If something's not working, change it. If something's not working, try something different, and listen to the people you're working with because they'll tell you why it's not working. So that's kind of that in a nutshell, and I hope that kind of gives you some context to the broader conversation we're going to have in a minute. So for more information and learning on Ageing Better in Birmingham, you can visit our website, which is ageingbetterinbirmingham.co.uk, and I'll drop that into the chat now so you've all got it. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for that. So we will now move on to a discussion where panel members will share their experience around challenges, the barriers that they've discovered, and what solutions worked for our programme here in Birmingham. And like I said at the beginning, we will finish with a Q&A session today. So if you have any questions at all, please post them to our panel by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you don't know how to do that, you can raise your hand by clicking on reactions and raise hand. And I will ask you to speak when the time comes. I'll be able to unmute you to do that. So on the panel today, we have some great people. We've got Hannah Webb, Network Enabler at our citywide hub, which is led by Age UK Birmingham. We've got Angela Richards, member of our co-production cohort, the Age of Experience group. That's our experts by experience, basically. And then we've got Sam Julius. She is the project coordinator at Groundwork West Midlands, and she leads our Birmingham work around the experts by experience. And of course, Dave, which you've just met, he's the relationship manager for Ageing Better in Birmingham. So the first discussion topic for you is thinking about why co-production is important. And Sam, I think you got something to tell us about that.
Yeah, so hello everyone. So from my point of view, I think co-production, it ensures that people who are affected by the decisions have been involved in the process. And in my personal experience, that makes for more fruitful and sustainable outcomes. People are more invested when their views and opinions have been listened to, and that motivates them as well to be part of something. When we ask the Age of Experience group, which we do often, why did you want to join the group? Why are you still involved in the group? Because we're really proud that we've had members for years. Once people join the group, they do tend to stay with us. So we often ask why that is, that they still continue to want to be part of the group. And quite often the answer is because they feel valued and listened to. That's a really common reason and a really good motivating factor. Also, co-producing with people with lived experience as a professional, it's a good check as well, really, like language and terminology, because we're all very good at making up words or acronyms and whatever that we may know what they mean, but our experts by experience really just what are you talking about? Talk in plain English, just tell us what it is that you want, and that really is a real good check for us. It keeps us focused and grounded on the actual aim and the purpose of the project, because sometimes you can get swept away with all the other bits and pieces. So for me, they're really good at drilling me back to what it is exactly that we want to achieve.
Thanks, Sam. Is anyone else on the panel want to talk about why co-production is important?
I think from a sort of network enabler perspective, I think just going on the back of what Sam said, it's really important that we allow people to have a voice. So often, as is the case for a lot of, people who come together, some voices can be sort of drowned out by the more loud voices. And it's important that, they're able to, share their ideas in a very safe environment, and to allow everyone to sort of contribute to the discussion. So we try to facilitate that as far as possible.
Thank you. Our next discussion topic is around creative, inclusive spaces. And Dave, do you want to go first on this?
Okay, so I guess the first thing is why an inclusive space, and you really want people to be engaged and open about their experiences and feel they can be themselves and can voice their opinion freely. So I guess the most important thing is that participants have a sense of ownership and belonging, that it's their space. So it's really important that any space that's constructed is not just constructed for people by professionals, but constructed with them and by them. So it becomes they have ownership of it. And as Sam said, people are more likely then to engage longer term because it's theirs. It's not something they go to, it's something they're participants of. And I guess, obviously, and Sam will talk about some of the ways that the Age of Experience group was set up, but you have ground rules, facilitate ground rules that enable respectful interactions, positive use of language that allows different opinions. And so those opinions are met and are listened to, but not just challenged or dismissed. So people are open to different opinions. And I guess another thing to do is think about where meetings take place. So not just physical accessibility. Are the ramps, are the hearing loops for people that might have impairments, but also distances travelled for people as well, and the times that people might be travelling, but also the psychological access of a space as well. Obviously, going through a door is always a barrier. So the more open a space can be. So is a religious venue open to everybody that might not have religious affiliation, for instance? So you really think through the space as well and how people meet is really important. As I say, Sam can talk about some of the specifics for the Age of Experience group and how that was set up and how that's a really inclusive space.
And we got Hannah, since you are the network enabler for our Aging Better citywide hub, have you got any learning to share around that when it comes to community groups?
Yeah, I mean, so like Dave was saying, it's really important that we create that safe space for people to come together and share those ideas. But with that, obviously, comes people with lots of different opinions, lots of different sort of backgrounds, interpretations on life and what they would like to bring to the table. This obviously can pose a bit of a problem if everybody wants to be heard at the same time. So it's allowing that to flow quite organically, but there have been situations where individuals have come together and they've strongly disagreed and we can't actually meet a resolution. So in that sense, we have to make sure that you know, people are each given a chance to talk, and then we can come to sort of an agreement on what, you know, a joined sort of effort into understanding what it is that we're trying to achieve as a whole. So that has posed you know, some problems in the past, but we've managed to kind of, you know, with the ground rules, set that in place and ensure that people have a say. Generally speaking, people normally come together for a common cause, and you can, you know, make that space available to people. I think what has sort of arisen as a result of the pandemic, for example, are some very socio-economic sort of differences with people, and it's raised issues around sort of mental health, different disabilities. So there was a gentleman, for example, who had a hearing impairment, and he felt that the activity which was proposed by the rest of the group didn't cater for his need. So that was a real sort of kind of thing that really kind of spoke to us and made us realize, actually, we really need to look deeper into the needs of the group, and not just the sort of desire of the wider sort of scope, if you like.
Thanks. Dave, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, I think it's really important. It's really important people are heard, but then if their opinions and their insight has changed something, it's really important that that's fed back as well. So they're not just heard, that those opinions are acted upon, and then that's evidence back to them, so they know that their time is having an impact.
Absolutely, and we try to do that as far as possible. That's why setting up a community group does take time, to ensure that, like you said, Dave, that people are heard and that actually it's acted upon. We're not just saying, okay, we hear you, but we're going to continue with our own agenda. We have to make sure that everybody has a fair say in how the group is going to move forward, and that can be challenging. It can be very challenging at times, but we more or less get there in the end.
Thanks. Hannah, you mentioned ground rules there. I think, Angela, as a member of the Age of Experience group, our Experts by Experience, do you want to talk a little bit about the barriers that you or members have faced, and how you or the members have overcome those barriers as part of that group?
Well, I joined the group. I wasn't aware of the group until somebody told me about it, and I'm mainly involved with the group from the Carers Hub. And it was somebody that used to work there that told me about it, and she thought that my experience might be valuable. So I went to one of the meetings, and I went to the first meeting that I went to was at Camel Croft, which is a retirement village for older people. And it's very nice, very open, and, you know, very comfortable. And we had the first meeting there, and there's quite a few people there in the hall where we were meeting. And we were around little tables, and they did start off by telling us about the ground rules. And most meetings, that's what happens. They discuss the ground rules and things about respect and others, and language and diversity, and things like that, really. So they told us all about that. And on the whole, once it's said, it's respected. I found that everybody there has respected it. We also have meetings there. Well, we used to have meetings there before the lockdown, rather. And we have various speakers, and they also respect the ground rules. We did have one occasion, and this wasn't a face-to-face meeting. This was during lockdown, and we had Zoom. And we did have one invited guest speaker who used language. I presume she wasn't aware of the ground rules, but I would have thought that she would have been, as she did talks at various places, and she did use language that that anybody would find unacceptable. And I have to say that it was picked up and dealt with straight away. I did address it with her, but she wasn't. She didn't seem to be aware of what she was saying was a problem. But I did address it with Sam and people further on in Aging Better, and I have to say they addressed it very, very well. So as regards ground rules, if anything is said, it is picked up straight away and dealt with, whereas in some organisations it can be left, and things just sort of dwindle apart. And I think it brings the group together when people know that things aren't left. So from the perspective of ground rules and respect and diversity, yes, that's what we need more of in all the groups and any future organisations that are set up out of this.
Sam, have you got anything to add on that about the group and the sort of barriers to sort of joining the group or taking part?
Yeah, I mean, just in, to tag on really the ground rules. So one of the things that we do with the ground rules is that we do let the participants have an input in the ground rules. So the ground rules weren't something that I or my predecessor set up and we said, this is what you must abide by. It wasn't a charter like that. It were, we had a conversation as a group, what kind of ground rules would you like? What kind of group do you want to come to? And the ground rules are refreshed as well. Quite often, and new members to the group have the opportunity to see the ground rules and to add to them if they want to, or to question them if they want to. So it's really important as well that we keep it fresh and relevant. And sometimes, like in life in general, you kind of get maybe a little bit stuck in a rut if you've been doing something a set way. It takes someone sometimes with fresh eyes to say, oh, actually, that rule's a little bit outdated now. It's not really very relevant. How about we look at it like that? So it's a constant, ongoing process and a constant conversation with the group of experts. And I think that's what makes it work and it makes it successful. And like Angela said, because they are listened to, it's not just, I don't just sit there and tick and say, oh yeah, thanks Angela, and tick it off and that's it. We actually, action and, really try and make the changes because it's their group at the end of the day and it needs to be somewhere that they feel safe, comfortable, confident.
That's great. And I'm going to post in the chat now to everybody some learning from Aging Better in Birmingham around overcoming barriers to joining activities. There are more learning briefings and reports on our website, agingbetterinbirmingham.co.uk, under our resource page. But that's one that's sort of relevant to especially what Hannah was talking around when it comes to community groups as well. So thinking about barriers to participate, have we got any examples of what barriers we've faced in Birmingham and how you've overcome them? I think, Angela, you got a couple of words on this.
Yes, I think with the barriers, access sometimes can be a big problem for some people. Where we used to meet was fine. Because it was centralised, more or less centralised, the building where we met. And if we do meet at the Aging Better or BVSC offices, that's in the centre of town in Digbeth. And that can be difficult to get to. And I personally don't like driving into a busy city because I could be driving around all day and then we've got parking issues. So we're fortunate in that we've been able to have for those that need it or not on the bus route, taxis that have been provided for us. So we're fortunate in that respect, which again enables us to get involved and join in whatever is going on there. So we've managed to overcome that barrier. The other barriers sometimes can be terminology. If you're in a group and they've met and whatever, there's certain things in terminology that you wouldn't, or abbreviations that I personally wouldn't understand because I'm not there every day, working there every day. So terminology can be an issue as well. But I have to say, it's a learning experience, not just a barrier, it's a learning experience, because if I do ask, if I'm not sure what it is, I can comfortably ask and it will be explained without any kind of uncomfortable feeling. So those are the two things that I have found that could be a barrier if you let it.
That's great, thank you. And how about Sam? Do you want to add anything on that? And then we'll move on to David and Hannah if you want to add anything at all as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Angela said, there can be a number of, of barriers. So social anxiety, right through to lack of resources. So we try and overcome those barriers by, like Dave said at the beginning, offering training sessions to people so that they can gain the confidence to take part and to sit on, certain panels and take part in the full programme of opportunities that we have available. Also, I think communication is really key. So clear guidance and regular communication, and ensuring that, the experts know what's expected of them, but in return, what they can expect from us. So what they can expect from me, right, you can expect that I will be in touch with you regularly for this. I am at the end of the phone. This is my email address. So having those open channels of communication and being there for people in a variety of different ways. Different people have different needs as well, so it's about, from my point of view, being aware of those needs. Some people an email won't work, so if it's an opportunity, say for Friday, and I need the only way I can get that opportunity to them is via letter, that person unfortunately is not going to be able to take part in that opportunity because the post just isn't going to get there in time. So it's about managing those expectations as well. Like Angela said, yeah, we do provide transport as part of the programme, so people in the co-production cohort are offered a taxi service that they're welcome to take to get them to and from programme opportunities. Also refreshments and lunch, because also those kind of things, as well as overcoming a barrier, they're also like, it's a bit of a nice thing as well, because you've got to remember, people are giving up their valuable time, for nothing. They're not getting any, it's not a job for them like it is for us. They're not getting that monetary out of it, so it's nice to be able to offer people some nice cakes and a nice lunch, and to give something back. I think it's really important that it's a two-way street. They're giving to us, so we need to find a way to give back in a way that's meaningful for them. And it often makes me smile, because when we do meet, a lot of the things, and in fact in this digital environment we found ourselves in, the thing that people miss most after seeing each other is the lunch that we have at Panel Croft. Again, like, when can we meet again and have the chips and the sandwiches, because that's their time then, when they socialise and they really enjoy that aspect. So investing a little bit in the nice things, and like Angela said, getting a nice venue. Don't just go for a community centre because it's cheap. Think about where it's located. Is there other stuff that goes on there? Because sometimes people stay at Panel Croft and take part in other activities after the meeting ends. They make new friends. So there's got to be something. Think about what your participants are getting out of that meeting as well, not just yourselves.
That's great. And Angela, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I found that when we apply for funding, one barrier can be that the application form, I think most people have said it can be an issue. Most groups have mentioned that and brought it up several times to access funding. The access of it isn't a problem, but it's just the application form really. But having said that, we are able to get support from the community, the leaders, the hub leaders there, so we are able to get access to that. The only other thing is that some of the questions on the form, I think some people found a little bit difficult to answer, or a little bit uncomfortable to answer, and that probably is a generational thing as well. So perhaps if it's worded slightly differently, or sometimes is it really necessary, could be one thing that perhaps could be looked at.
Thanks. That brings us really nicely into the next part, actually. So was there anything that you felt became apparent in terms of barriers during the course of the programme, and how did we address those barriers? And I think we can talk a little bit about the monitoring and the evaluation that we've done as part of Aging Better in Birmingham and all the Aging Better programmes. And we've done sort of national evaluation and local evaluation, and part of the funding that Angela is talking about, our micro fund, a requirement of that was to sort of engage with our evaluation forms, and that was a bit tricky, as Angela mentioned as well, both around people being uncomfortable to give certain information away about themselves. Some of the questions was around people's loneliness and the levels of how much they engage with other people. So over to you, Hannah or Dave.
So I was just going to add as well, maybe it's more going back to an earlier point about groups and how welcoming they should be. So say, for instance, if it's an established group, this isn't just for older people, this is for anybody, walking into an established group can be really daunting. So I think one of the things Age of Experience does really well is it kind of interviews people first, prepares them for what they're going to be walking into, and then buddies new people with established group members. So people aren't just thrown into a new group dynamic, which can feel, even if it's not cliquey, can feel cliquey if you're an outsider. So I think that's really important as well, to be mindful that yeah, people might, if they've got anxiety, they might really struggle with an established group. Back to the point we were discussing now, I think that's an inherent tension, isn't it, between community development on the ground and how regular people go about everyday business, and systems and processes that might be put in place. So particularly this was a long-term research project, essentially Aging Better has been. So that kind of the forms and the research element of it could be a barrier to people participating on any number of levels. So it's really, how that's done is really important. And I guess the most important thing from Aging Better's point of view is it was always optional. Filling out the form was optional. But again, as Angela said, it could still be a barrier to people participating. So it's really important to think about how you put those processes in place and how you approach people to participate in them. I think Hannah will probably have some more things to say about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the questionnaire process has always been sort of a bone of contention for our groups from the very start, and it was something that we did, feed back to the main team. But unfortunately, it's it's one of those things that we have to do. We have to gather that sort of information, and sort of critical data that we need to sort of have an understanding of the types of people that we're meeting, and also to ensure that the program itself is achieving what it set out to achieve, which is to ultimately reduce isolation in the older community. But yes, that did pose an issue for many of our groups. Like Angela said, some of the questions were considered to be quite intrusive or meddlesome. Not, many people did comment on, why do I have to answer these specific questions? I just want to come along to a group and enjoy a chat and a cup of coffee. I think in that sense, then it was incumbent on us as the network enablers who were, supporting that group and facilitating the groups to explain the importance of the CMF and the evaluation process. And like Dave said, even though it was, it wasn't mandatory, I think it was important for people to really understand why we wanted that information. And on the back of that, many people did decide to fill that out. I don't think it quite took into account different levels of need, the disabilities. Many people just even struggle to hold a pen just to fill out the application. It does take about 5 minutes. And some of the questions, how they were phrased as well, weren't particularly clear. So it did mean that we had to sort of bring others in to either interpret some of the questions for people, or to even answer the questionnaires for them on their behalf, obviously with their consent. But overall, this is something that we make very clear at the start. Before any group applied for funding, there is a questionnaire process, there is an evaluation process, which we would kindly ask you to participate in. Do you have any issues with that? And, more often than not, people would comply and help us out with that.
Thanks. We've had a question from Renisa Enos. I hope I pronounced that correct. She has 2 questions, actually. One of them is, in terms of older people being part of the co-production process, what are some examples of the tasks that they carried out? Who wants to answer that? Angela. Sorry, I muted you. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we've had the opportunity to get involved as much or as little as you want to. So I've been involved with things like test and learning. So that's constant evaluation of how Aging Better BVSC are doing. I've also had the opportunity to get involved in when people are applying for funding, perhaps to develop, for example, Tyburn area, and people have put their bids in. organisations rather put their bids in and look at these organisations to see what they can do, and are they not just there to develop the area but to develop it for older people. So I've been able to use my skills and experience there to say, well, you know, what are you doing about this and what are you doing about that type of thing, really. So I've had that quite a bit of, you know, experience and opportunities to get involved with who's eventually accessing funding, and various things as we've been going along throughout the pandemic as well, to develop community areas and small funding as well as large funding. So I've had quite a bit of an opportunity to get involved from that perspective. So yes, I think from an older person, I may not look it, but from an older person perspective, yes, I've had the opportunity to say, well, I don't think my knees would cope with that one. Yes, so yes, quite involved.
David.
So just to say, so I was interviewed and there were older people on the recruitment panel, which is great. And also I ran a procurement process, and older people were involved in that procurement process from start to finish, including being on interview panels for prospective providers as well. So really varied things that people were.
Sam.
Yeah, just to make clear as well that it's, you know, there are real, you know, big opportunities, like Angela said about Fun Pan and Dave said about recruitment, but there are also like smaller opportunities as well. So we have people who are involved in, you know, maybe not less important, I don't want to say that, but ones that maybe don't seem as daunting. So like to invite someone to be on an interview panel, for instance, you will only get a select certain people who feel confident to do that. But then there are people who want to contribute to the newsletter, for instance, or want to send a video sharing their experience. So there's a real like wide variety of opportunities that people can be involved in. We, under normal circumstances, we host an annual event in Birmingham City Centre, which is usually attended by over 100 people across the city. And the experts have the opportunity to get involved in that. So where is the venue? What kind of activities are we going to have? Do you want to be on the registration desk on the day? You know, so there's really, from really small parts to really big parts. So like Angela said, they can get involved in as many or as, you know, as few opportunities as they want. And as I get to know them individually, I can then tailor the opportunities to meet their needs. So I know the kind of things that Angela would be interested in. So when I have those kind of opportunities, I kind of have a list of people that I would go to first, so that we're targeting the right people all the time as well.
Hannah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, from a sort of delivery perspective, I mean, Ageing Better groups, our focus has always been about facilitating older people to become very independent with their choices, and to form groups which are sort of community-led completely in their nature. So that means us taking a step back and allowing those older people to fill out the application, decide amongst themselves what resources they need, what support they need going forward. But it's all about giving them the sort of authority, if you like, to make that decision themselves, which is crucial to what Ageing Better is all about.
And I just want to add as well, so we've had quite a few campaigns running as part of the programme. One of them was a quite high profile one called Ageing with Pride. It was led by LGBT Centre in Birmingham, and they had a part of our experts also take part in not only the process of procuring that, but also delivering the campaign and taking part in videos and talking about their experiences and sort of advising around it. And it's been the same around a podcast that we've sort of produced, which talks about people's experiences around certain themes, such as LGBT in housing, for example. And we've also had sort of marketing campaigns around neighbourliness, and those have been developed by people over 50. So they've had the sort of wording around what works, what type of things would work in terms of reaching people in the city, what type of language to be used, the name of the campaign, as well as the type of imagery, you know, making sure we're not just portraying people with sort of grey hand canes. that's not what older people look like. So There's another question, which is how else can we encourage BAME older people to join during recruitment? Have we got any answers around that, or ideas or experiences from Birmingham?
I'll go. I think it's, again, like we've discussed, it's about, you know, having an open policy. So the Age of Experience group is a very open group, you know, and we welcome people from all backgrounds. And in fact, when I took on the role, as again from the outside coming in, I noticed that in my opinion, it wasn't an overly diverse group at the time when I took on the position. So that's something that I really tried to push forward, to make it a more diverse group that was better reflecting, you know, the citizens of Birmingham. So it was a case of talking to the network enablers, so, you know, Hannah and her colleagues, and explaining where the gaps were in the Age of Experience group, and did they know people in the community, and what could I do to make that more accessible? You know, should I have a one-to-one meeting with them? Should I take a member of the group along to meet them so that they can understand that actually it's not quite as scary as you might think it is? You know, it is, you know, it's a bit of fun. You know, it's not all serious. You know, we do have a good time and we do have a laugh. So, and also getting them to come, like Angela said, everyone's always invited. If you show interest, you're invited to attend a meeting, and, you know, nothing's expected of you. You just literally just have to turn up, soak up the atmosphere, get introduced to people, and kind of find your feet. And then after that, I follow that up then with, how did you feel? You know, what could we do to make it better? You know, what works for you? If you don't want to join the group, why do you not want to join the group? Is there something particular that you experienced, you know, that we can change? But yeah, I think it's around like cultural awareness as well, and understanding, like Dave said, about where your venue is. Is it going to cause upset? What kind of topics do you talk about? And making sure that people just really understand the purpose and the point of, you know, why they should be involved in this group. And that's where the long-standing experts are real champions of that, because they'll speak really passionately about why you should be in, but, you know, they probably, why wouldn't you be involved? Like, this is a great thing to be involved in. And that's what we've used over the years, instead of it coming from me, coming from the experts already embedded, because they can shout about it and, you know, fully explain to people much better. And then they build up that relationship, so they're not going into an empty room where they don't know anybody, because they've had a conversation with Angela before, so already they've got that connection.
Angela, have you got something to say on that?
Yes, I'd like to say that, I mean, I don't know what happens in other cities, but in Birmingham, I feel that it's successful. And I think the reason why it's successful is because people go back to the meetings, the Age of Experience meeting, they want to go back. And the reason that you want to go back, or we want to go back to the next meeting and the next one is the next one, because we feel comfortable and we feel welcomed. And also it's just such a variety. There's a variety of speakers. And if, for example, I said, well, it would be good to see if you could get somebody that can talk about X or Y subject, you know, that will be done at some point or other, that, you know, research will be done to find those kind of speakers that can talk about subjects that are useful and interesting for us as older people, or, you know, a group or whatever. So from that perspective, it's good. But also, going to the Age of Experience, people have an opportunity. There's a wide range of opportunities there. There's opportunities to find out about health and well-being. You're very well supported, as I say, by the various hubs. And also you can interlink. So it's almost like a little directory. We're going, and there's a little directory where you can find out who, I mean, I've done it with Hannah's directory, Hannah's area. Just find out who people know that can help with certain bits and pieces. So we have our little connection groups there for various things outside, really. And from the Age of Experience group again, I've been able to go to one of the national events, which was a couple of years ago, sorry, before the lockdown. And I went to the Sheffield meeting, and everything was arranged for me to be able to access that meeting comfortably. And at the meeting, it was very, very interesting. And also to find out what different people or different regions are doing there and what we can learn, and also what they could learn from us. And as a result of that meeting, I managed to meet somebody from another area just by London. And I still keep in touch with that person today. Somebody that I would never have met, just got talking to. We had the same thing, which was age of experience and what we're doing within it. And I still keep in touch with her today, almost 3 years later. So we both got that experience and we talk about it all the time. So there's an opportunity not just to meet each other in the group, which was on a monthly basis, but to meet people further afield if you want to. It's there.
That's great. Hannah.
Yeah, I just thought it was worth noting. I mean, obviously the last year has, with the crisis, with the pandemic, it's really sort of exposed the fragility and the inequalities amongst people. And some of our groups have really began to focus on that. So we have one group in particular, which is predominantly made up of the BAME community, and they reacted quite strongly to the Black Lives movement, which kind of raised all sorts of issues around, you know, race inequality. But not only that, it threw up issues around, you know, domestic abuse, ageism, mental health, lots of stigmas. So they're now refocusing their own delivery on sort of addressing all of these issues within their communities. So hopefully that will encourage more people to come forward who do feel like they're unable to talk about those things, or perhaps feel stigmatized. So it's been a real sort of move in the right direction to addressing those really important life-altering things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to note, we got a few more minutes left. We've said we're going to continue a little bit with a Q&A afterwards, but if anyone has any questions, if you could click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom screen, and if you don't know how to do that, you can raise your hand by clicking on reactions or on the raise hands, and I will ask you to speak when the time comes. I think for now we haven't got any more questions. So I've got a question for the panel. Is there anything in particular that you feel worked well, and anything you feel like we could have done better? And I think, Angela, you may have something on this.
Yes. I think perhaps what could have been done better is, I mean, it's all sort of like looking at it now, you know, we're coming towards the end, but perhaps what could have been done better is going to the Age of Experience meetings and other meetings. I don't see a variety of ethnic minority people within the organisation. So, and I know it's been a struggle to get certain groups together. So we don't see a lot, well, I don't know if there are any groups that are Black male groups, for example, or other ethnic minority groups. I don't see a lot of that. And I think that may be representative of the fact that Aging Better doesn't employ a lot of Black men. I personally haven't seen it. I don't know what their ethnic group, how it's made up, but I don't see that. And because of that, perhaps that's one of the reasons why we can't seem to target those groups that you want to try to help and support either. So I think going forward, if that could be looked at, if you're trying to target certain groups, you need to get the same within the staff. The staffing level really needs to be inclusive of that. I think technology as well is a big thing for me, because I'm not technical or mechanical at all, but I have to say that I've had a lot of support from Aging Better as regards that. I did have a laptop that was in the spare room in a corner somewhere, and I found it, but didn't know how to use it really. And with joining the meetings during the lockdown, I wasn't originally able to do that. I could only do it as and when by phone. And as people know, if they have to phone in, that can be quite difficult, because the phone, the battery doesn't last very long because it uses a lot of battery, and it uses a lot of your digital power as well. So it was becoming quite expensive. And I did feel a little bit that I was left behind really there. But fortunately, I was offered a dongle. I think Sam or somebody probably thought, well, you know, let's see what we can do for Angela. And I personally was offered a dongle. I know other people have been offered various kinds of support, and that has helped me. And here I am today. I would never have thought that I would be sitting here Zooming. That's another thing I've never heard of before COVID, was Zoom. So yeah, so from that perspective, yes. But yes, as regards volunteers and who you've got in the hubs, that sort of thing, I think if it could have been more diverse, the staffing and the volunteers, I think that would have perhaps enabled us to get a bigger variety, target your client group.
I think those are really good points, Angela. I think, Dave, maybe you have some points about that, especially around our work in Sparkbrook.
Yeah, I think some of it's around, I think the group's incredibly diverse on one level, but it tends to be, I think the makeup is more female than male. And I think there's something around why and how men volunteer and participate in voluntary activity compared to women. So they need to be looked at. And I think Angela's right around role modeling. It's really important to have people that look like you, engaging with you. And I suppose BVSC does have black male board members and black male members of staff. They just don't work on the Aging Better programme. So again, I guess there's something around role modelling. And I mean, we do have Sparkbrook Hub is kind of community led and does reflect that community. But again, they didn't engage out of Sparkbrook, which kind of diluted the diversity of the group on some level, which is a shame. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it really. I mean, as I say, you've got to change. If the process isn't working, you have to change it. And that's what we did with Sparkbrook really, and set that kind of group up independently. But, you know, that worked in the sense of it got those voices out of Sparkbrook and they could join the conversation, but they weren't in the room having a conversation with the other people. And as Angela said, that's sometimes where the interesting things happen, when people network. I mean, community development is about relationships, and working with communities is about relationships, and the best way to form relationships is to be in the room with people. So on one level, it worked in Sparkbrook that we could get people's voices to feed into the broader conversation, but it's a shame they couldn't be around other people, around their peers in a room with them, because I think that would have really strengthened the group. Yeah, so it worked, but didn't work on one level.
Definitely. I've noticed that we've got Vimla in the group. I'm going to allow you to talk. So Vimla, have you got anything to add in terms of sort of how you've taken part in the Age of Experience group, or anything around barriers to participation and what your experience have been? You're on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself. Hi.
Your question, please.
Well, if you had anything that you wanted to contribute around sort of your experience of being part of the Age of Experience group, and any barriers or any things that you've seen was a barrier, but that was then sort of how that was overcome as part of the program, or your experience with that.
Can I ask one question, please? Yeah. My question is to Dave, and then Alina, if you could answer my question, please. When Dave started his talk, he started with Birmingham is a city of migrants. My only simple question is, people, those who come here to live, work, and spend their lives, do they always stay migrants, or do they become citizens eventually?
Just to clarify, I meant the city is built on people that come here. and I just use that term, and that's historic as well as contemporary. So the city's history is one of migration to it, and that's what I meant by that. And I know that's quite a loaded term, so apologies if it's come across in the wrong way, but I'm the child of migrants and I feel I belong here. So, yeah.
So do I. So that is sometimes, you know, no matter how hard people try, at the end of the day, they are migrants. That's just, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was just little curious to know. Now, my experience with the Age of Experience, my participation on my involvement has been quite valuable to me. And I think I have contributed as well to the group.
Thanks, Vimla. I'm gonna have to stop us there because we are running out of time and people are quickly leaving. So I know people have other meetings to go to. So I just want to say thank you to our panelists for coming today and for sharing your experiences. Hopefully people have found this, anyone who's attended, you found some learning from here that you thought was useful. If you do have any questions, you can stay on for a couple of minutes, but and we'll answer those as well. And if you don't, you are free to leave. Thank you.